Item 2.2, Integrated CNS and Spectrum Strategy. 2.9, and as a reminder, we are not opening the debate on the item. What we need is whether you believe the paragraph adequately reflected the discussion of the committee, or if you have any amendment or proposal for change. So we'll go paragraph by paragraph, and we'll start with 2.91. Is there any proposal for correction or amendment to this paragraph? Okay, thank you. I'm seeing none. 2.92. .93. 2.94. 2.95. So we'll move to the recommendation in 2.95. Recommendation A. Okay, I'm seeing Australia.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chair. I think I'm actually more on 2.95B, if that's okay.
Yes.
Ensure through the implementation of the Safety Oversight Program, can we add or other appropriate state oversight mechanism? Because Australia, in terms of CNS, wouldn't have that item covered under that particular heading. And I think the sentence should go on to say that the designated competent, and I think it should be aviation authorities, are involved in the safety case assessment. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, the chair will just, the secretariat will just clarify.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. We believe that the competent authorities should include aviation and other non-aviation authorities that are involved in the radio regulatory framework. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Secretariat. Australia, does that satisfy your comment?
I think the point of this particular recommendation is to make sure that aviation authorities get to play in a field dominated by communication companies and firms. So I think this being ICAO, I think the purpose of this particular clause is to make sure that aviation authorities get involved in the spectrum issues, which I think we can take as given all the other authorities of a telecommunications nature will be involved. So I think that's why the word aviation is probably there, should be there for emphasis. Thank you, Chair.
Secretary.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. The thought is that the USO program is, well, the master of the USO program in each state, if you will, is the aviation authorities. And the issue here is that they, as being the ones in charge, they need to ensure that any other competent authorities need to be involved as well when required. And in this case, for instance, this would refer to text that already exists in Annex 19, Doc 4444 and so on, which reflects if there is a change in the environment, then that needs to be addressed and so on. So the aviation authority is the master. The aviation authority needs to engage other authorities when required. This is the thought. So we should not limit it to aviation authorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. Okay, I'll take it that the committee is happy with A and B. Australia, you still wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I heard what the Secretariat said, but in fact, the aviation authorities are not in control of the spectrum. In fact, the heading of this topic is long-term evolution of CNS systems and frequency spectrum access. And the Secretariat's own paper says that frequency spectrum is a limited resource and that various sectors of industry, including aviation, are competing for the resource. So I'm a little bit surprised by the statement that, quote, aviation authorities are in control of the spectrum. We are not. So I think we need to be clear that what we are asking for here is that aviation authorities must have a role in a spectrum consideration that is played out at the World WARC conference, I think it's called. And we're trying to mark a spot in the sand that please make sure that aviation authorities are involved in an international discussion about spectrum. I hope that's clear, Chair. Thank you.
Secretary.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Australia. I'm a little bit concerned that we may be, there may be a misunderstanding, so I wonder if there is some clarification of the text required. This text is not about the World Radio Communication Conferences. It is not about the process involved with those. It is about the internal mechanisms at play within a state when the spectrum resource is being managed within that state. The safety case assessments are made by those involved with those assessments, namely the ANSPs and so on. It's the aviation authority that signs off on those assessments, always. Now, other authorities may also need to be involved because other authorities, they may affect the environment which then triggers a safety case assessment. And this is the thought that we are trying to convey. In other words, another authority can cause inadvertently or by choice a change in the environment. Then that authority also needs to be involved. That is what we are trying to convey. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. And Australia, what I'm seeing as well is that this direction is to the state, and the state will ensure that all competent authorities, including aviation authorities, are involved. And I'm seeing general agreement, and so I would suggest, if there's a need, that you can talk in a sidebar. Thank you. So we move on to C. In Germany.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Following the discussion we had on this agenda item, I ask for two additions to the and little changes to number C. And I think the Secretariat has already been informed, at least on the first one, to read it out as follows: launch a study, and then to insert built on a multidisciplinary view of the C, N, and S elements and frequency spectrum, and then to continue to evolve the required CNS frequency spectrum, access strategy, and systems roadmap in the short, medium, and long term, and then again to add in a performance-based and service-oriented manner, and to delete the following words from looking beyond the normal time frame of the Global Air Navigation Plan, brackets GANP, and then the rest remains as it stands, to ensure that CNS systems remain efficient users of the spectrum resource. The reason for this addition is to ensure the study is built on a balanced view of the C, N, and S elements in line with the integrated CNS strategy contained in WP 37 and equal representation of expertise of the four domains CNS and spectrum is essential. So I can read out if necessary, but this is the proposal and request, and I think it has been well supported by a number of states. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Germany. The Secretariat accepts the proposal. Is there any objection from the committee to this proposal? Okay, thanks. I'm seeing none. United Kingdom, you wish to speak on C as well?
Yes, please, and thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to fully support the German intervention because the UK feels it's appropriate and necessary to represent or to reflect the multidisciplinary approach considered necessary, and it's an approach that appeared to be widely supported in Committee A, given the number of positive responses to Working Paper 37. The multidisciplinary approach is considered essential to ensure the integrated CNS strategy can become a reality. Without the multidisciplinary approach, there is a risk of an unbalanced and therefore flawed strategy arising from whatever activity is undertaken. Thank you.
Thank you. Sita?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, ladies and gents. CETA would like to express support for the interventions by our colleagues in Germany and the United Kingdom. In particular, as we understand the fundamental premise of the recommendations under this agenda item and these papers, and indeed the spirit of the section 292 of this draft report, is to maintain a multidisciplinary and collegial manner to apply performance-based approach across CNS and spectrum disciplines. And of course, given the magnitude of this task at hand, I would respectfully suggest that the intention of this recommendation is best achieved if the word study is adjusted to study group, on the understanding, of course, that such multidisciplinary group of experts works under ICAO's leadership and guidance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In this conference, we normally determine what to do, but we don't specify which group will do it. That's the normal procedure we should follow. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Secretary. We'd like to move on to D. Okay, thank you. 2.10, GNSS evolution. 2.10.1. Okay, 2.10.2. 2.10.3. France.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Chairman. Good day, everybody. France would like to propose an addition to 2.10.3 to reflect an intervention that we had made regarding WP111. The last sentence in the paragraph is targeted. We would like to add the following terms in English.
Donc la phrase commence par
The sentence begins.
The information provided. The new text would be, comma, was apprised of the considerable administrative workload that the inclusion of GBAS approaches into the PBN manual would entail for unclear added value. So I'm reading again, dictation speed. The committee noted the information provided, comma, was apprised of the considerable administrative workload that the inclusion of GBAS approaches into the PBN manual would entail for unclear added value. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, France. Is there any objection from the committee to this amendment? Thank you. I see none. The Secretariat will accept the amendment. Two 10.4. Two 10.5. 10.6. 10.7. 10.8. 10.9. Senegal.
Merci.
Thank you, Chairman. We think that the second sentence of 2.10.9 could include the conclusions of the technical team that will be studying this subject, as seen in 2.10.8. It would be indicated then that there be a reference to 2.10.8, which refers to an expert team. This makes 2.10.9, in fact, unnecessary, and we could delete it, as we are sending this, either we send this issue to the team of experts or we delete 2.10.9. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We believe that 2.10.9 summarizes the discussion in the committee. It's not really redundant. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Secretariat. Hayato, do you wish to speak on 2.10.9?
Yes, please. And, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I support the Secretariat intervention on this one. I believe the text in 2.10.9 reflect very well the discussions that we have in a couple of days ago, and also it's covered the bigger GNSS elements, include the constellation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And is there any objection from the committee that this does reflect the intention of the meeting? Okay, thank you. 2.10.10. 2.10.11. 2.10.12. 'Okay, we move to the recommendation in 2.10.13A. B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Allow me to go back to recommendation F, and I have a suggestion on that to make sure that the early involvement of state in the new SARPs. So the F recommendation at the end would read like, in coordination with state, international organization, and recognized standard-making organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand the point. However, the expert group that is doing the work consists of representatives from states, international organizations, etc. And I don't think it's essential to repeat that in this recommendation, but to emphasize the need to coordinate with other standards-making organizations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Secretariat. Based on that information, is there any objection to F standing as is? Thank you. I see none. Okay, we move on to the draft report for agenda item 2.3, future provisions of aeronautical and meteorological service. 2.11. 2.12. 2.13. Greece.
Morning, everybody. We have a recommendation in paragraph 213, line 1 before the end, operational and meteorological components. We propose that addition because a meteorological event might happen, operational components needs to change, so the operationals have to take action. Thank you.
Thank you, Greece. Does the committee have any objection to the proposal by Greece? Okay, I'm seeing none. We'll make that amendment. 2.14.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretariat would like to make a small editorial correction for 2.14. The second sentence from the bottom, which reads, the working paper also raised the need, supported by the committee, for further training and education on the impacts of space weather on international air navigation. This is misplaced. This should be at the end of paragraph 2.15. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Greece?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The bottom line of this paragraph, where is written format by 2026, we would like to add enabling further integration into SWIM. And that is because we are adding these words in order to be clear that it will be incorporated into SWIM. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the committee have any objection to Greece's proposal? I see no objection. 2.15. Greece?
Yes, in the second line before the bottom of that paragraph, after service providers, we might add aviation users. That clarifies that the main interest is among aviation users, because other stakeholders, for example, electricity suppliers, have a role to play. So in order to be clarified that the most important users are the aviation ones. Thank you.
Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretariat would like to make it more precise, actually, to bring it in line with Annex 3 terminology, which is aeronautical users instead of aviation users. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Secretariat. Does the committee have any objection to the Secretariat's proposal? Okay, I see none. 2.15 is accepted with the amendment. 2.16. Greece.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a rewording in order to express better the sense of the paragraph. In two bottom lines, the committee noted the information in the working paper of Indonesia and supported collaborative decision-making mechanism and the information system in the framework of volcanic ash developed with delete by Indonesian in this case to ensure the safety of flight operations. Do you want me to repeat?
Thank you, Greece. The Secretariat is happy with that. Does the committee have any objections to Greece's proposal? Okay, I see none. 2.18. Thank you. We move to the recommendations in 2.19A. Greece.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a request for clarification. What does it mean by adequate capacity in the first line of this recommendation? And then we would like to withdraw the word global because ICAO always deals in global level, and to delete the last word of the last sentence, program, because we don't understand why we have to put that word there. Thank you.
Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, we just want to make sure it is in line with Annex 3. So we suggest that in the last line, delete the word information, and then it will read Aeronautical Meteorological Services for International Air Navigation instead of Aviation, which is actually the title of Annex 3. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'll ask the Secretariat to read the entire paragraph as it would stand, because they were amending the amendment from Greece. So can you read how you would like it to sound?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry for the confusion. I was working on the version suggested by Greece. Greece suggested adding the word information services for international aviation. I suggested that we delete the word information proposed by Greece. And instead, we simply say aeronautical meteorological services for international air navigation. So the whole A reads, A, and international user organizations ensure that adequate capacity is applied in the collaborative management and development of aeronautical meteorological services for international air navigation, period. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Secretariat. New Zealand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. New Zealand would propose to amend A slightly by introducing the word expert between the words adequate and capacity in line 1, in part to address the confusion mentioned by Greece earlier, and in part to keep the recommendation consistent with the text above. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Greece.
I would like some clarification in my point what adequate capacity means. Thank you.
Yes, Secretary.
They are referring to expert.
So the words adequate capacity refers to expert capacity. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Greece, so are you happy with the New Zealand proposals to add expert and the clarification of the Secretariat?
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, thank you. So is there any objection to the final proposal provided by the Secretariat, including the word expert added by New Zealand? Okay, I see no objection to the amendment. We move to B. Greece.
Sorry for coming back again. I would like to suggest the delete of first part of the first sentence, and that sentence starting by progress the work of the development of the procedures, and as it continues. And in the last line, after as, we have to delete to be, as we have to add to be described.
Mexico.
Gracias, presidente. Buenos días a todos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. I have an objection to the proposal that was just made. It seems that the paragraph as it is drafted now ensures that future challenges in meteorology for the organization means that we have what we need to deal with these issues. And so I think this is a positive message, and it focuses on the necessary resources, either internally or in the states, to be able to implement these tasks. So I think we should leave the paragraph as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mexico. New Zealand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. New Zealand, similar to Mexico, would prefer the paragraph remain intact. We believe that would better reflect the nature of the conversation that took place with respect to WP 183. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. Is there any objection in the committee, other than a comment by Greece, to changing the paragraph? Australia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Australia would also like to see that the start of that sentence left in to reflect what was discussed during the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I am seeing support for the paragraph to remain as is. C. Okay, thank you. So move to recommendation 2.3/2. A. Greece.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to propose to add after for aeronautical purposes in compliance with the ICAO information meteorological and the rest.
Thank you, Greece. Any objection to that amendment by Greece? I see no objection. B1. Greece?
Yes, I have some proposal on this point. After necessary, in the first line, to add to ensure a smooth transition from traditional alphanumeric code and the rest as it is. And to our proposal is better to leave the convert to industry instead of dealing ICAO with that. Thank you.
Luis, can you repeat the proposal?
So, in the first line, after procedures necessary to ensure a smooth transition from traditional alphanumeric code, TAC format, to IWXXM format. We propose to delete the word convert because it's better to leave industry to deal with that conversion. Thank you.
Thank you, Greece. The Secretariat accepts that. Is there any objection from the committee to the change? Okay, I see no objection. 3. Greece?
Sorry for coming back again, but I would like in the previous recommendation where we proposed to delete in point B, ensure it has sufficient capacity and expertise. I would like to point out that it's better to leave that issue to the Assembly. It's better Assembly to deal with the resources. That's why my proposal was pointed out.
Thank you, Greece. The committee has already spoken on it. We have 4. Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Chairperson. Saudi Arabia would like to suggest to split this recommendation into 2 bullets. So 4A would read that state to provide ICAO with their IWXXM implementation plan, and 4B would read like that ICAO monitor the status of implementation of IWXXM at state and regional levels.
Go ahead, Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarification, this is about small 4, which reads as is now, survey states on their expected IWXM implementation status by 2020. And the proposal is to split this into 2 parts. One is for states to provide ICAO with data, and B is for ICAO to monitor the implementation. Is that right? Just to confirm the intent of the proposal.
Saudi Arabia?
Yes, that's right. I want to split it to state action and ICAO action.
I think it's okay. We will need to make sure that the format is correct because we have this 1, 2, 3, 4 ABCs, and also we'll make sure that the structure of the recommendation works in line with the principles applied for all the other recommendations. As I can see now, we have separate recommendations for states, and we have a recommendation for ICAO. But we will capture the intent of the proposal and try to make sure it works in this context. You will see it in the final report. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the committee have any objection to the proposal by Saudi Arabia and the actions by the Secretariat to capture that? Nicaragua.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Una observación.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. One comment concerning 4. We need to make a correction in the last line. We say IWXXM. This is an issue with the Spanish version. In the English version, it is correct.
Thank you, Nicaragua. That is noted, and I saw no objection to the proposal by Saudi Arabia and for the Secretariat to make the change for the final report. That completes this item, and we move to recommendation 2.3/3, provision of space weather information service meeting the operational needs of users. Recommendation A. B. And C. No proposal for change. We move to 2.3/4, development of cost recovery mechanisms for the provision of aeronautical meteorological information. A. B1, Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Chairperson. I prefer to replace the word deficiencies by limitation. So the bullet would read review limitation on the current cost recovery system.
Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't feel strongly about the whether it's deficiencies or limitations. However, deficiencies is the term we use widely in the regional air navigation plan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Secretary. UAE.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My apology if we'll take you back to recommendation 2.1.
Sorry, before we go back to 2.1, does this relate to B1? Okay, so staying with B1, and we would, does the committee have any objection to the Secretariat's proposal to leave this recommendation as is? Okay, I'm seeing no objections. So B2. And B3. Okay, thank you. So this is accepted. So United Arab Emirates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Recommendation 2.1, if you recall working paper 100, have been widely supported in regards to reduce runway separation minima. We all agreed that it will definitely enhance capacity at airports. I was very disappointed that I'm reading the recommendations of 2.1-2 and I see nothing related to reduced runway separation minima. So I suggest to the states here that we add an item D and specifically mention update provisions related to reduce runway separation minima. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, UAE. Yes, I think you had discussions with the Secretariat who agreed to add this. So if there's no objection from the committee, we would make the addition. Denmark, you wish to speak on this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to recommendation 2.3/3, the recommendation that ICAO, little b, if you allow, in order to be consistent with previous notes in the second line, whether information services providers and then aeronautical users.
Thank you. Secretariat accepts if there is no objection from the committee. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. I'm seeing Netherlands.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I just wanted to come back on one small proposal that was made by, I think it was Greece, on recommendation 2.3/1, element B, where, well, one of the proposals was that the deletion of the issue about capacity and expertise, which I understood that the committee did not support. I wanted to come back on the other proposal also made by Greece to change in the line 3 the word as in to be, because also in my point of view, for the moment the GAMP is still in progress or in process, and I think it would be better to express that it will be described in the GAMP, because then also we would have a better knowledge in the end what the capacity and expertise is that ICAO has to put in the work. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any objection to adding the word to be as proposed? Okay, thank you. I see none. That's accepted. Okay, thank you. So we have completed the draft report on Committee A on Agenda Item 2. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. And we are now on our final agenda item 5, emergent issues. I need to announce a change in the order of sub-items for agenda item 5. We will begin with sub-item 5.4, cyber resiliency. Then we will proceed to 5.2 on operations below 1,000 feet, followed by 5.3 on remotely piloted aircraft systems. And time permitting this afternoon, 5.5 other emergent issues impacting the global air navigation system, including unmanned aircraft systems, drones, and supersonic and commercial space operations. Tomorrow, we will address any of these items that have not been completed today, along with sub-item 5.1, operations above flight level 600. As the case with the previous items, I will make a brief introduction of the subject, including sub-items to be addressed. As a reminder, the draft reports of agenda item 4 and 5 will be addressed on Thursday, so that on Friday, we'll be ready for the review of the final report in plenary. With a diversifying operational environment in terms of new aircraft types, such as drones, operations and airspace users, the global air navigation system is being impacted and may face safety and efficiency challenges not seen before. And due to the increased use of connected systems in support of air operations, consideration should be given to cyber hazards that may impact its resilience. The development of remotely piloted aircraft systems, RPAS, the increase in new types of operations above flight level 600, and airspace users flying close to the ground, sometimes below 1,000 feet, requires that the air navigation system evolve to continue meeting the needs and expectations of all stakeholders, while supporting access and equity in the use of airspace and available infrastructure and services, notwithstanding the current delineation and management of controlled airspace. The committee will be invited to put forward recommendations on A, the process and procedures to improve the management of operations above flight level 600 and below 1,000 feet. B, the regulatory framework to enable the integration of RPAS in non-segregated airspace. C, cyber strategies to reduce system vulnerabilities. And D, any other emerging issues that may impact safety and regularity of the air navigation system. We will begin with the agenda item 5.4, cyber resiliency, which is divided into 3 separate batches, as you can see on the screen. We will look at trust framework for cyber resilience, management systems for cyber resilience, and cyber information sharing. We will start with work in paper 27, presented by the Secretariat. Secretariat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. Working paper 27 highlights the importance of cyber resilience in civil aviation. Cyber resilience in the aviation context can be thought of as the ability of the aviation system to endure and recover from a reduced performance state resulting from cyber-related threats and incidents, such as disruptions, data loss or corruption, and/or loss of connectivity or interoperability. As aviation becomes an increasingly interconnected digital environment, cyber resilience becomes critical to the ongoing safety of operations. The paper highlights that the current evolution towards increasingly interconnected information systems introduces new risks, and cyber-related events can affect aviation on many levels and can jeopardize performance of the air navigation systems in unforeseen ways, including information exchange between stakeholders, potentially directly affecting the safety, capacity, and efficiency of the aviation system, with possible severe repercussions. The aviation system therefore needs to improve its resilience to cyber threats in this new reality, especially with new entrants such as unmanned aircraft systems or remotely piloted aircraft systems. Trust among states and aviation stakeholders that ICAO has fostered since its inception is essential to cyber resilience. Without a globally coordinated trust framework developed transparently with all stakeholders to secure ground-ground, air-ground, and air-air exchange of information, the cyber resilience of the aviation system may not be assured. The paper also highlights that successfully managing cyber resilience in an increasingly interconnected and complex aviation system requires a globally harmonized approach between all stakeholders and accordingly should be dealt with in the 2019 edition of the Global Air Navigation Plan. The paper further recognizes that despite aviation's increasing level of reliance on information technology, human involvement will remain critical in the ongoing resilience of civil aviation, and operational staff should receive general training with regards to cyber threats and be encouraged to report any suspected cyber threat or incident. To finalize, the paper recognizes that the aviation system will continue to be interconnected at an ever-increasing rate, and the digital aviation system will continue to expand. Increased awareness of cyber threats and system resilience processes, and a globally coordinated trust framework consisting of governance, policy, and overall technical performance requirements developed with input from all relevant stakeholders allows for the realization of an information-rich and resilient aviation system. Recommendations are in paragraph 3.2. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Secretariat. As we move to the presentation of papers, just remind the committee that the papers have been circulated for a while. The purpose of the presentation is to allow the papers to be discussed. So please respect the time frame in presenting the papers. That will allow us enough time for discussions later. I invite Brazil to present working paper 8.3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Brazil, I'd like to present working paper 83. Since 1994, ICAO has played an essential role in the development of a safe and efficient international civil aviation system that connects people and economies worldwide. The developed system is based on a trust framework that allows international civil aviation to operate seamlessly across boundaries. Based on the needs of the aviation community, ICAO needs to evolve this historic trust framework to meet the new challenges of global digital connectivity. The aviation community is inherently conservative and therefore has been slow to embrace a widespread use of the Internet in the safety-critical operations. However, some progress in the area is taking place in an incremental and fragmented manner. If the aviation system is going to continue to function as a single connected sky, a more strategic integrated approach is required. Some of the challenges that should drive a more comprehensive approach relate to the expected growth in demand for air transportation and the need to accommodate the new entrants, including autonomous vehicles, manned aircraft systems, and remotely piloted aircraft systems. ICAO must work to help all stakeholders to provide a system that allows these new entrants to innovate while providing enough infrastructure to ensure that these new operations could be integrated within the legacy system. Failure to do so will lead inexorably towards fragmentation of the global system and may jeopardize the safety levels. Without setting a trust framework to manage identity within a digital environment, there won't be any willingness to commit to the collaborative effort needed to operate the international civil aviation system of today and tomorrow, which relies more and more on the use of digital information. With a common trust framework enabling the key capabilities and concepts identified in the GAMP, the necessary evolution of the aviation system can be achieved more quickly, easily, and cost-effectively. For the evolution of the aviation system, it's necessary to develop a common digital platform for the whole aviation community to reliably and securely exchange information supported by a solid concept of operation as an enabler of overall international civil resilience. Finally, Brazil would like to highlight that considering the need for different expertise to deal with this important subject, which is the development of a trust framework in a digital environment for the air navigation system, requiring expertise possibly not available within the aviation industry. Brazil is of the view that a multidisciplinary group involving aviation and non-aviation stakeholders should take care of this subject under the leadership of the Navigation Commission with the support of the Secretariat and be part of the GAMP developments. Concluding, in item 3.5, there is the list of the recommendations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Brazil. United States, present working paper 6.7.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the United States, I would like to present Working Paper 67. Today's aviation networks are a patchwork of regional ground networks, point-to-point connections, and commercial air-to-ground network providers. The current network infrastructure does not provide global access to services, irrespective of which country provides the service or which country consumes the service. Delivering the global ATM system requires the Aviation Community Operational Resilient Network Services, ACORNS, provided by a secure global aviation intranet, where all operational stakeholders can exchange information regardless of the origin or destination of the information. By definition, resilient network services can detect, protect, respond, and recover from cyber attacks. In order to ensure resiliency, the network services need to be aviation community-based and secured from outside intrusion. Any user, system, application, or service connected to ACORNS will need to perform mutual authentication to ensure that the information exchange can be trusted. In order to do so and ensure integrity of information, a global trust framework for ACORNS must be established. Due to different network requirements, each of the independent networks will provide performance-based classes of network services that will apply to the appropriate applications. To make ACORNS secure, resilient, and interoperable, new global network, cybersecurity, interface, and identity management requirements and policies must be adopted. These policies will establish an interoperable trust framework, allowing applications from different countries and organizations to establish secure communications through mutual authentication, authorization, and accounting. The conference is invited to agree to the following recommendations. Urge ICAO to include the Aviation Community Operational Resilient Network Services, ACORNS, as a threat in the Global Air Navigation Plan. And as recently amended, urge ICAO to develop a framework for establishing a consortium of network service providers creating ACORNS. This consortium is an open, federated organization of existing and new service providers establishing a global digital network. Also, urge ICAO to develop high-level policies for inter-organizational trust as part of a global trust framework, and to commission in part their implementation through the appropriate ICAO expert groups and regional implementation groups. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, United States. I now invite ACI to present Working Paper 187.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and all delegates. On behalf of ACI, I would like to introduce Working Paper 187, covering airport preparedness on cyber resilience. Due to the rise of innovative technologies in the aviation industry, systems are increasingly interconnected. Digital transformation, automation, and increasing reliance on data brings with it the challenge of keeping systems and information secure. A successful cyber attack can cause disruption to airport operations, loss of proprietary information and other strategic assets, and affect business reputation and stakeholder trust. It is recognized that airports, as with other stakeholders, need to identify existing and new cybersecurity threats, increase their awareness of security issues, conduct robust risk assessments on their systems and networks, and make them as resilient as possible. ACI strongly supports collaboration with states and other stakeholders to ensure a practical, coordinated effort in addressing cybersecurity threats. ACI supports the need for a globally harmonized aviation trust framework for data exchange that affects safety-critical systems and encourages the work described in the conference working paper 27. Given the importance of this topic, the World Annual General Assembly of ACI passed a resolution in June 2018 to reaffirm the commitment of airports to addressing cybersecurity. ACI has already commenced the development of a range of tools and guidance to assist airports to manage their cybersecurity implementation. This includes a self-assessment tool, guidance material, a training course, and other assistance. The recommendations in the paper are that to note the provided information on ACI initiatives that should protect low-risk and internal systems, to request ICAO to support the development of a trust framework for safety-critical systems, and to recommend states and ICAO to work together with industry to ensure that practical, efficient, flexible, and effective cybersecurity regulations and measures are implemented. Thank you very much.
Thank you. ACI, may I have a show of support for this paper to be discussed? Thank you. Now ask Council to present working paper 169.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Working paper 169, Considerations about Cybersecurity in Aviation, calls for the development of a global framework harmonized between all aviation stakeholders for trusted and secure digital information exchange in aviation, an aviation trust framework, in support of global aviation modernization. We support the strategic principles of Secretariat Working Paper 27. The modernization efforts that seek to improve aviation operations promise to yield significant benefits through airspace optimization. However, as the demand grows for more interconnected, dynamic, and reliable data exchange, the associated benefits also come with added cybersecurity risks and potential for cyber attacks to safety, air navigation capacity, efficiency, and operational capabilities. That is why ICCAA, in conjunction with CANSO, IFA-TCA, and IF-ALPA, is asking for the development of a new and globally harmonized end-to-end approach supporting the need to increase cyber resilience of the civil aviation system. This approach should consider the governance and technical aspects and should leverage commercially available technologies and methods to meet the demands of speed, capability, and affordability for the aviation industry. The conference is invited to agree to the following recommendations: that the conference request ICAO to establish a formal project involving states and international organizations in the development of a globally harmonized and accepted trust framework, addressing the objectives detailed in paper 169. And B, request ICAO to develop a roadmap with industry engagement and inclusion within the Global Air Navigation Plan for the development of emerging technology enablers to address the future evolving cybersecurity needs of civil aviation. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a show of support for this paper to be discussed? Thank you. May I ask the Secretary to provide any clarification on the papers presented? Okay, there is no clarification from the Secretariat. The floor is now yours for discussion. I remind you again to be brief with your intervention and to recall that what we are looking for is a broad mandate from the states on what needs to be done, not a technical discussion on how we should do it. Thank you. France.
Merci. Thank you, Chair. I would like to wish an excellent day to all of the delegates. France supports the need to secure exchange of information that are useful for the functioning of the world information system. In general, all initiatives that are there to strengthen the protection and resilience of the aviation system from cyber attack is something that France can commit to. We will commit to the work under number 27 of the Secretariat, 67 United States, 83 Brazil, and 169 from the industry. The priority should be given to governance principles and to establishing rules and standards to be respected by the states and industry in order to ensure the resilience of the air transport system from cyber attack. ICAO must urgently put in place modalities for transparency and a balanced mechanism to allow for a representative group of world approaches to define the principles that will then be worked upon by the specialized panels in their respective disciplines. A mechanism for the world, the global system requires maturity that would then relate to the global system. Correspondingly, all of the states should make sure that their infrastructure systems are compatible, meeting the national and regional requirements. Therefore, the system should be interoperable and allow the use of different technical solutions on the basis of requirements for safety. The air navigation system must be systemic on a global level. It must be based on an integrated risk-based system, taking into account the risks of cyber attack, and also be linked to safety of air transport, as well as the need for functioning operation of the system. France believes that in order to deploy technical solutions under a trust mechanism, it is important to use an open approach that is compatible with the use of the industry standards as they exist. And in particular, it is far too early, Mr. Chairman, to talk about introducing a new thread in GAMP, and certainly it isn't sure that this should be the adopted solution. In particular, if France subscribes to recommendation C of working paper 67 from the United States to determine high-level policy for trust between organizations, which is part of the global trust framework, and demanding that it be, sorry, the sound is gone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will not take this as a sign of censure. So I repeat, in particular, if France subscribes to little c of the working paper from the United States to develop high-level policies for interorganizational trust as part of a global trust framework, and to make sure that this partially be implemented through appropriate ICAO expert groups and regional implementation groups. France does not consider the document to provide support to paper number 27 from ICAO as an approach to global systems. I think this is a non-exhaustive list of potential technical solutions which could be used only when the principles and governance have been established. And I insist upon this, that once those have been established, Chairman, France once again will be very vigilant to make sure that the principles defined for a trust mechanism on a global level would not lead to a biased approach to technologies on the part of the industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Franz. There was no censure from the chair, but we can take the technical glitch as a reminder on the time constraint. Switzerland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We would like to be brief. Switzerland fully supports working paper 169 presented by Council, ICC, AIA, IFATCA and IFALPA. We should keep in mind that a globally harmonized trust framework is one element and key building block. However, there are other elements to consider for ensuring a safe and secure aviation. As highlighted in working paper 169, regular regulatory and oversight authorities as well as industry will need to closely collaborate to achieve the objective of a sustainably secure and safe communication infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. Netherlands.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Netherlands supports a recommendation as presented in Working Paper 27 of the Secretariat. As also stated in the Working Paper, aviation's cyber resilience cannot be assured without global coordinated trusted framework consisting of governance, policy, and overall technical performance requirements for system interconnectivity and interoperability. For that reason, it is important that ICAO will develop a global harmonized aviation trust framework that allows the realization of an information-rich and resilient aviation system. The trusted framework needs to include the development of an architecture that preserves interoperability, creates resilience, and that is designed to be secured. The definition of a trust framework will also need to be clearly defined to avoid multiple interpretation within the different aviation communities that will be affected by it, such as safety, security, and information security. We do realize that it will take time to develop and evolve the trust frameworks related to digital connectivity, and care needs to be taken to ensure that all the necessary supporting activities are clearly defined and implemented. However, ICAO should act quickly to advance its important work, and it should be done with a high degree of transparency. Close coordination at ICAO level is also required, because cybersecurity needs to be addressed in a horizontal, cross-cutting, and functional manner. Also, coordination with states and international organizations is important and required. Therefore, for example, a dedicated cyber group with multidisciplinary expertise from states and international organizations could be a suggestion to develop a global, harmonized aviation trust framework. Participation should not be restricted to the aviation community, but also include, if required, specialized expertise from outside the aviation industry to advance this important work. This group should be overseen by one technical body within ICAO, as the ANC. And finally, the activities related to trustworthiness should be closely tied in to and aligned with the existing requirements related to safety management system, security management systems, and information security management system, and security management plans. Considering the fact that cybersecurity evolves quickly globally, we urge ICAO to proceed with these activities at the earliest time possible. We also like to make a quick intervention with regard to the paper 67 of the United States. We do support the concept of acorns. However, we also support the intervention made by France. And we think this document compiles a non-exhaustive and structured list of potential technical solutions which actually could be used after the definition of governing principles. Thank you.
Thank you, Netherlands. New Zealand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. New Zealand supports Working Paper 27 by the Secretariat and welcomes a recommendation for ICAO to work with states, industry and international organisations to develop a globally harmonised aviation trust network to allow the realisation of an information-rich and resilient civil aviation system. It is our view that the ICAO is best placed to lead this work and that it is a natural extension of the work it already does to ensure the integrity, efficiency and safety of the international civil aviation system. ICAO already provides the foundation of a trust framework of another form when you consider it is the standards and recommended practices of the annexes to the convention and the standardized and interoperable systems they create that facilitate international civil aviation. The recommendations in WP27 are a natural continuation of that role. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, New Zealand, Austria.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning. Austria supports the principles outlined in the working paper A3, involving that the trust framework to meet the new challenges associated with a digital environment is challenging. The application and use of a globally harmonized trust framework is one, among others, of the key building block to sustain a secure and safe aviation. Austria notes in particular recommendation A with regards to the important notion of collaboration with industry and all aviation stakeholders, recommendation B as a longer-term objective. And for recommendation C, the use of the internet is fully recognized. However, the risks should be well understood and assessed. Further, Austria supports as well the intervention done from France and Netherlands concerning acorns. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Austria. Singapore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Singapore supports the recommendations in the Secretariat paper in Working Paper 27. Singapore notes that information communication technologies bring both opportunities and vulnerabilities. Cyber resilience can only be achieved through the efforts both from the individual entities and the collective community. In Singapore, the aviation sector has been identified as a critical information infrastructure sector, and legislation and regulatory guidance on cybersecurity requirements have been put in place for compliance by systems owners like air navigation service providers. However, such legislative requirements for compliance are only applicable to services provided within the national boundaries and do not apply to services provided by foreign vendors. Aviation is a transboundary business. Invariably, we will buy services from international vendors. As there may not be regulations for companies providing international services, we need ICAO and the international community to set high cyber resilience standards for such vendors. Only then can we ensure that there are no weak links in our cyber defenses. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Poland.
Dear Chairman, we would like to welcome the concept of acorns contained in document 67 presented by the United States, and we fully support comment made by France regarding the government's working agreements, technical solution for the trust framework and principles for the global aviation framework. In our opinion, when established, acorns should operate in line with Global Air Navigation Plan and Global Air Safety Plan. With regard to proposed recommendation B, we would like to emphasize that if we welcome the definition of the concept of operation of a trust framework, this recommendation addressed implementation, the format of which still has to be agreed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Poland. Rwanda.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning to my fellow colleagues. Rwanda supports Working Paper 27 by the Secretariat. We support Working Paper 67 as presented by the United States in the establishment of acorns. Cybersecurity, however, possesses its own set of challenges when dealing with cyber-related implementation of the computerized era, and we must consider this in the acorns program for some states. We support all parts of Part 3 in the conclusion of this paper. Rwanda also supports Working Paper 169 as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Rwanda. Dominican Republic.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to everyone. The Dominican Republic would like to support the Secretariat and congratulate it on this excellent working paper, number 27. It is certain that it establishes a good basis for all of the other working papers that have been presented on this theme. I'd like to also take advantage of the opportunity to support 187 by ACI, particularly the recommendations in 3.5. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominican Republic. Spain.
Gracias, señor presidente, y buenos días a todos los.
Thank you. Good day, everyone. Our delegation supports Working Paper 187 as well as Working Paper 27 from the Secretariat, which are very welcome. These are very specific initiatives, very welcome by airports for cyber resilience in a global world, and where airport systems will become more and more interconnected with the operators and air navigation services as well as other services. All of these systems depend on each other to ensure information exchange, and digital information exchange is key in optimizing the capacity and effectiveness and efficiency of airports in the face of cyber threats, which can have an impact on all of our systems, and therefore this is why we support these initiatives proposed by ACI and the Secretariat, and we invite everyone to work on these issues and implement policies and guidance that are appropriate in the cybersecurity environment. As for Working Paper 67 from the United States, we believe that the acorns concept should in fact become more mature, and this is why we support France and the Netherlands. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. IATA.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. IATA has recognized that cybersecurity is a paradigm shift, which has an increasing relevance as a threat and risk to the aviation landscape. The overall lack of awareness, coupled with the absence of procedures and processes to protect against cyber threats within SWIM and its enabled services, constitutes a hazard to aviation. Therefore, needed is a clear understanding that aviation is an electronically data-intensive connected industry, whereby a cybersecurity issue originating from one area may possibly and will affect the complete information chain. In this regard, IATA supports the approach by ICAO in taking in its reflection in Working Paper 27. In general, we support the need to increase the work on identifying threats and risk, thereby ensuring only trusted partners are able to connect within the SWIM architecture and receive flight critical information. Aviation actors involved in the information chain need to determine how best to safeguard SWIM. During this conference, states are being introduced to the ICAO cybersecurity program. IATA must stress the point that information is shared is risk shared, and that trust and confidence is of paramount importance. We cannot overemphasize the seriousness of needing to work together as one system to ensure safe, efficient services to all aviation actors. Any agreed upon program will need to be globally accepted, as this said program will require strong coordination, which, if lacking, thus adding further challenges to the required effort. One way forward is determined. It will be incumbent upon ANSPs, airports, operators, and providers of services to become accredited, upgrade their systems, and maintain a safe, secure system. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, IATA, and we'll try to complete this before the break. Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I shall be brief. Good morning to all. Council supports all working papers and interventions presented here by Member States and international organizations regarding the needs for an aviation trust network. Just want to state that Council will work very closely with ICAO to assist in the creation of this network, and let's see if we can get the details coordinated, that we have a system that can be accepted by everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Thailand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, all. In recognizing the need for the resilient aviation, Thailand would like to express our support on the Working Paper 27 presented by Secretariat. However, we are in the view that the cost aspect should also be considered as part of the Global Trust Framework developments stated in para A of the recommendations. We also agree with the inclusions of aviation community operational resilience network services, or AN-Conf, as the threat in the camp, as proposed by the United States in the Working Paper 67. To ensure the recognition on the importance given to the cyber resilience issue, still, we agree with the France interventions regarding the rules and regulation principle for the Global Trust Framework. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Oman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to all. Oman supports Working Papers 27, 67, and 169. We value and agree with the comments made by France earlier. We recognize the increase in the system are becoming integrated and interoperable, which requires high attention. We also recognize the work and efforts in addressing cybersecurity issues
in other fields that has impact to aviation, such as telecommunication. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Oman. Germany.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to give the strong support to the interventions made by the Netherlands and France. I like to highlight the necessity to secure the exchanges of information supporting the operation of the global aviation system and its present and future functionalities. Therefore, I think ICAO should urgently set up transparent and balanced working arrangements when setting up a trust framework. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Germany. Asetna.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. The implementation of the various modules of the GANP are important when we look at interoperability among the systems. Today, stakeholders are spending a lot of time and money on reinforcing the systems, and they have a very low level of knowledge of the risks regarding the external connections. As regards the modules of the ASBU, they are slowed down by cyber threats, and in Cosecna, Nama, Roberts, FIR have systems for exchange and with knowledge of the systems of the various service provider. So we need to have a system, and we support the comments made by France and the working paper 27 by the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you, Asegna. Afka.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. AFCAC supports working paper 27 by the Secretariat. We also support working paper 67 by United States of America, the introduction of unmanned aircraft systems and remotely piloted aircraft systems and other imaging technologies is already demanding flexibility for managing air traffic. AFCAC therefore urges ICAO to include the air concept as recommended by United States. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Just give me a moment to consult with the Secretariat and see if we can sum up before the break. Okay, thank you. So I'll attempt to sum up the discussions on batch 1. With regards to working papers 83, 67, 169, and 187, the committee agreed on the urgent need for the development of a trust framework for a digitally connected and interoperable aviation system, and that this should be pursued in full transparency by ICAO through a group of experts to be formed under the auspices of the ANC with the support of the Secretariat. The committee agreed that coordination with both aviation stakeholders and non-aviation technical experts is necessary for the development of this trust framework, and in particular with the governing bodies of the Internet. And the committee recognized that due to its importance and to improve visibility, the subject of trust framework be included in the Global Air Navigation Plan. However, the technical details on how this should be done should be left to the experts to mature. Are there any remarks to my summary? Okay, I see none. Thank you very much for a very good discussion this morning. We'll take the coffee break.